Emily, I'm sorry, but I really need you to come up with some money this time. I absolutely need a substantial amount for the business. Please. I refused, saying, I can't come up with such a large sum of money. Then I was met with an unreasonable and demeaning response, what? Your husband is in trouble, and you won't help him? Isn't that too harsh? If you don't have the cash, why don't you just take out a loan or something? Emily, you really lack consideration. That's why you're such a pushover. Being cheated on for 10 years. Tears started to flow. If only I had been a bit stronger, I wouldn't have put Michelle through this. Michelle shook her head and gently stroked my body. It's not your fault, Mom. The bad one is Dad. I can't forgive Dad for making you sad. I'll make him regret it. I was greatly moved by Michelle's words. Daniel, you might not know this, but Michelle was born with something wonderful. You used Michelle as an excuse for your infidelity. I really can't forgive you. After 20 years of marriage, and on your birthday, we'll celebrate grandly with Michelle. It will surely be a splendid hell. Looking forward to it. My name is Emily, a 44-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Daniel and our 17-year-old daughter Michelle. Daniel and I met 20 years ago. We were colleagues who joined the company in the same year. Despite being called a difficult time to find employment, from an initial group of 7, it was just the 2 of us left after a year. Until last week, our closest colleague, Sarah, had been working hard as well. Sarah pushed herself to the limit but reached her breaking point. I wanted to work more with you, Emily and Daniel. But, it seems I can't anymore. You two keep up the good work. That's what she said before she left the company. The workload given to new employees was harsh, and I often thought about quitting. Having a father who ran his own company, I occasionally entertained the thought of maybe I should help with my dad's business. However, going out for drinks after work with Daniel and venting about our frustrations helped us keep going. Eventually, Daniel and I naturally started dating. We felt comfortable together and respected each other. Being with Daniel felt like a reward for enduring the tough job. I thought this feeling was one-sided, but Daniel also said, I'm really glad I worked hard. Because I got to be your boyfriend. It was a moment when I felt our feelings were mutual. After 2 years of dating, we got married. 3 years into our marriage, our daughter Michelle was born. Wow, doesn't Michelle look just like me? Look, she's making the same face I did when I was a baby. Daniel said, adoringly, when Michelle was born. Back then, Daniel was also enthusiastic about parenting. Daniel wanted to show Michelle all the beautiful things in the world, and we took her to scenic places when she was young. However, our utmost happiness was short-lived when a concern arose when Michelle turned 3. One day, when I went to pick up Michelle from daycare. I did a story reading today, but Michelle asked questions about everything she wondered in the story. It's good to be curious. But it made it hard to continue the reading. That's what Ms. Miller, the preschool teacher, told me. There were other comments too. When Michelle gets absorbed in drawing or reading books, she doesn't respond even if called. The other day, she kept drawing and ignored her meal. How is she at home? I was so struck by the accuracy of these observations that I was at a loss. At home too, Michelle would sometimes not touch her food when engrossed in something. When I consulted Daniel about it, he said, maybe Michelle's development is delayed. You know, Emily, you also have that tendency, right? She must have taken after you, he said with a laugh. I was shocked by Daniel's words as if I had been hit with a blunt object. Even though I knew it was Daniel's usual way of teasing me, it was still irritating. And it seemed too early to conclude that Michelle's development was delayed. It's fine though. Michelle is so cute. Lucky Michelle, you look like me, so you'll grow up to be a beauty. If you looked like your mom, you'd be a sure orangutan. It seemed Daniel thought that a 3-year-old Michelle wouldn't understand what he was saying. I hugged Michelle, who was looking at Daniel puzzled. Daniel didn't know. Michelle is much smarter than he thinks. When Daniel wasn't around, Michelle would say to me, Mom, you are cute. It's mean to say orangutan, right? Dad is handsome. But maybe his personality isn't the best. I won't tell him, though, speaking surprisingly maturely for her age. This continued while Michelle was in daycare. Due to my worries, I decided to consult a pediatrician before Michelle started elementary school. I shared Michelle's behaviors and actions at daycare and was advised to have her tested at a specialized hospital. Michelle and I went for the test, clutching the referral letter, to measure her intelligence. The result was shocking. Mom, Michelle's IQ is 170, she has an IQ of 170. Michelle was identified as gifted. I knew such children existed from magazines and news. But I never dreamed my own child would be gifted. I was uncertain about whether to share this fact with Michelle herself. But the doctor who conducted the test explained it to her in an understandable way. Michelle just listened and said, So I wasn't sure if she understood the situation at that time. However, on the way back from the hospital, Michelle looked up at me, holding my hand, and said, Mom, don't tell Dad, okay? It's said that gifted children understand things quicker than others, but at the age of 6, Michelle seemed to have grasped her situation. When our marriage got into 10 years, Daniel talked about quitting his job and starting his own business. Your dad built his company from scratch, right? I want to do the same. Daniel mentioned he was seeking advice from my father and began visiting my childhood home. When I first heard about his independence, I was honestly shocked. Michelle was still in elementary school, and I was worried about our future finances. However, my parents thought highly of Daniel for coming to them earnestly for advice. Daniel talked sincerely about his future plans. He said he decided to go independent, thinking about the future of you and Michelle. If that's the case, I'm willing to support him. Your happiness is what matters most. My dad said happily and offered to help fund Daniel's independence. With such support, Daniel successfully became independent and started his own business. Since then, Daniel hardly came home. He was busy with his new venture, and I focused on keeping our home while continuing my job. Nobody except me knows about Michelle being gifted. Daniel still seems to think Michelle's development is delayed. According to Michelle, that's fine. Dad feels safer thinking I'm a bit slow, she said. Indeed, Daniel tends to choose who he's with. His pride keeps him from associating with those he perceives as superior to himself. Probably, that's one reason he wanted to start his own business. He looks down on me a little. Michelle understood Daniel's personality and acted accordingly. Then, one day, Daniel said something unexpected. It's because I've just started my own business and things are really busy, so I rented an apartment near the company. It was a post facto explanation. It was curious where he got the money for the apartment, but it turned out that my father had lent Daniel one of his own properties. I thought it was another case of both of them being too soft on Daniel, but what was done was done. From then on, as if it were only natural, Daniel stopped coming home. Even when I suggested going to clean the apartment from time to time, he said, I only go back there to sleep late at night, so it's not messy. Refusing to let me in. Not only that, but Daniel also stopped contributing financially to our home. The cash flow is tight right now. It's just for the beginning. Once things get on track, I'll contribute properly. I'll even spoil you with luxury. I wasn't interested in luxury. Yet, wanting to support Daniel, I managed to get by on just my salary. Relying on Michelle's maturity, I even started working more overtime to support our household. As I often had to leave her alone at home, I provided Michelle with a phone. It was an old device I had used before, now fitted with a new SIM card. Don't worry, I won't use any harmful sites. I've set up GPS and security, so it's safe. Michelle quickly mastered the use of the phone. Then, she suggested, shouldn't we also put GPS on Dad's phone? I didn't understand why Michelle would suggest that. To be precise, I pretended not to understand. Dad just goes back and forth between his company and the apartment. Sometimes he comes home, but that's like once a month, right? What's the point of putting GPS on Dad's phone? I said this to Michelle, but really, I was trying to convince myself. Michelle then said, with a wistful smile, Mom really trusts Dad, huh? Michelle is perceptive. It was as if she could see right through me. Of course, there were uncertainties. I often wondered where Daniel was and what he was doing when he didn't come home. Yet, the fact that Daniel chose me was a source of pride for me. Michelle, it's okay. Mom and Dad understand each other well. I said this and hugged the young Michelle. I must have shown my anxiety in front of Michelle. Being keen, Michelle must have picked up on my emotions and was worried. I reflected on my actions. Even if Michelle is gifted, she is still a young child. I vowed not to cause Michelle any more worry. And then, 10 years passed since Daniel's independence, marking 20 years of marriage. Before I knew it, Michelle was 17. Though Michelle was exceptional, she didn't go to a particularly high-ranked school but chose a correspondence high school instead. I thought it was a wise decision on her part. Michelle had always been considerate in her interactions with others, holding back her opinions to read the room. Being a student involves continuous communication. Michelle, aware of her giftedness, feared that being her true self might lead to conflicts and hurt others. People might think I'm running away, but that's okay. The correspondence course suits my dream better. I want to become a lawyer or a mystery writer. Michelle seemed content with her life. Daniel remained the same. Despite promising luxury 10 years into his business venture, he had not contributed to household expenses even once. Instead, he had started asking me for money a few years ago. Most of them were requests for a few $100s, so I had been giving Daniel the money from my own funds. Emily, I'm sorry, but I really need you to come up with some money this time. I absolutely need a substantial amount for the business. Please. Despite continuous support from my father, it was a mystery why he was always short on funds. I refused, saying, I can't come up with such a large amount of money. He would retort, what? You won't help your husband in trouble? That's too harsh. If you don't have the money, why don't you take out a loan? Emily. You're so unhelpful. That's why you're a fool. His comments were unreasonable and demeaning. Daniel knows that I dislike borrowing money. So, this was his way of indirectly asking me to funnel money from my father through me. Daniel's company is already receiving assistance from my father. Due to his pride, Daniel couldn't bring himself to ask for more help directly. That's why he demands it from me. He probably thinks that if I ask, my father would provide the funds. I understood Daniel's intentions, but I also thought it was quite something for me to comply. Of course, I couldn't possibly ask my father for more financial support. Reluctantly, I had no choice but to dip into the savings I had set aside for Michelle's future. Michelle, with her keen intuition, quickly caught on to this. I can't stand to see Mom struggling for Dad. He neglects us all the time, but only comes to us for money. That's the worst. Michelle was quite angry with Daniel. Daniel used to take Michelle to his apartment frequently when she was in lower elementary school. Though he stopped visiting home, he seemed to still hold affection for his daughter. However, from around the time Michelle turned 10, their meetings were only outside. Mom, I think you really need to think about your future with Dad. No matter what happens, I'll be with you, so don't worry. Michelle's suggestion was understandable. For the past 10 years, we were practically living separately. Moreover, Daniel didn't contribute to household expenses, but kept asking for money. Maybe it's time to seriously consider our future, as Michelle suggested. While pondering these thoughts, I received a message from Daniel. Again, the message was a request for money. Initially, Daniel would come in person, looking apologetic as he borrowed money. But over time, he shifted to phone requests. Then to specifying bank transfers. Now, he merely sends brief messages like, please transfer the money by Monday. Honestly, I have no more money to give Daniel. It's not just about the shortage of funds, but I no longer feel any sincerity from Daniel. I decided I needed to talk to Daniel and headed to his apartment. Today was a holiday, and Daniel's office should be closed. I figured he would be at home if I went in the morning. I chose not to inform him in advance, fearing he might just ask for money again, so I went unannounced. I had never visited the apartment before and got the location from my father. I left after confirming Michelle had gone to the library, thinking she might try to stop me. Daniel's apartment was located near the business district. There's a subway station nearby, and with plenty of greenery, the scenery looks appealing. I could see why he might find it hard to return to the suburbs. It seemed I somewhat understood why Daniel seldom came home. His room was on the top floor of the building. Since my father owned the building, I had the access code to the autolock from him. I didn't know Dad owned such a nice property. I thought to myself as I rode the elevator up and pressed the buzzer at Daniel's room. When there was no answer, I pressed again. And this time, I felt someone approaching from inside. It was morning, so he might have been sleeping. Feeling guilty, I stared at the door as someone opened it. Huh? I couldn't help but let out a gasp at the sight of the person who answered the door. It wasn't Daniel. I instinctively ran to the corner of the hallway. I couldn't see her face clearly, but it was definitely a woman. Daniel was living with another woman. I just took the elevator down as I was. The possibility of Daniel cheating wasn't entirely out of the question. But I never imagined he could be living with someone else. With my head still in a daze, I went home. When I got home, Michelle was there. Michelle approached me with a stern look on her face. "Mom, where have you been?" "You're as pale as a ghost," she said. Thinking that I shouldn't worry Michelle, I responded with a forced smile. "I just went for a little walk. The weather was so nice." But immediately, Michelle interjected. "A walk? You went all the way to the business district for a walk?" Her words made me realize. Why did Michelle know that I had gone towards the business district? "Sorry, I've also put GPS on your phone. You went to Dad's apartment, didn't you? You found out the truth, didn't you?" Hearing Michelle's words, I slumped onto the couch, powerless. And then, I spoke to Michelle, who was sitting next to me. "Michelle. I'm okay, so can you tell me everything?" When I said that, Michelle nodded deeply. I remember it vividly. I must have been about 2 years old. Dad took me out and there was a stranger woman there. When Michelle was young, Daniel often took her for walks in her stroller. He used to say to me, "You must be tired from taking care of her every day, so just relax at home." Sometimes it was the same woman, sometimes it was a different one. It seems Dad has been seeing various women from the past. Just when I thought he was taking good care of Michelle, it was all an excuse to meet women. Normally, memories from around the age of 2 would be forgotten. But Michelle is gifted. With her exceptional memory, she remembers it all even now. When Dad became independent and lived in an apartment near his office, I was taken there several times. And there was always a woman there too. Dad thought I was not smart enough to understand, so he didn't think I'd mind the presence of an unknown woman. That woman was always at that apartment. Michelle then took out a phone. It was the phone I had given her when she was still little. She turned on the phone and showed me several photos. Dad has been with this woman for 10 years. I was astonished by the photos. Sarah. Sarah, who was once our colleague, was pictured looking cozy with Daniel. The photos were dated regularly every year for the past 10 years. To think I've been cheated on for 10 years. These were the photos Michelle had been taking all along. I wonder what Michelle, with her superior understanding, thought when she knew the truth about Daniel. And what she felt as she continued to take these photos. Just the thought made my heart ache. "Michelle, I'm sorry for putting you through this." Tears started to flow. If only I had been more attentive, I wouldn't have caused Michelle such pain. Michelle shook her head and gently rubbed my back. "It's not your fault, Mom. The bad one is Dad. I can't forgive Dad for making you sad. I'll make him regret it." Michelle's words made me react strongly. Make him regret it? It sounded ominous, but frankly, my curiosity overwhelmingly prevailed. "Dad, that woman, they're planning to go on a trip soon. Look, isn't Dad's birthday coming up soon? It's a celebration trip. That woman posted it on her SNS. She's so desperate for approval, isn't she?" Michelle seemed somewhat excited. There must be some plan to teach him a lesson. I listened to Michelle's continuation of the story. Why should only his mistress celebrate our dad's birthday? How about we celebrate it grandly too, from us? Before I knew it, my tears had stopped. I'm so grateful that Michelle is my daughter. Though, this wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't met Daniel. I suppose I can at least thank Daniel for bringing Michelle into my life. Thinking about it, it's quite something that after 20 years of marriage, he's cheerfully planning a trip with his mistress. I'd like to ask Daniel, who always begs me for money, how he managed to scrape together the funds for this trip. Even now, messages from Daniel like, "Did you transfer the money?" are arriving on my phone. I'm sorry, but it's unlikely that Daniel will receive any more transfers from me going forward. Maybe it wouldn't have felt so bad if the mistress was a complete stranger. Of all people, why did it have to be Sarah, our former colleague? Looking at the photos of them on Michelle's phone, I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Daniel, you thought we knew nothing and did as you pleased all this time. You married me for my father's wealth, didn't you? Weren't you supposed to provide us with a luxurious life after becoming independent? I'm not interested in luxury, but I would appreciate it if you didn't make promises you can't keep. You might not know this, but Michelle was born with something wonderful. From a young age, she witnessed your infidelity, and yet, to avoid hurting me, she kept your infidelity to herself. She's such a kind child. You used Michelle as an excuse for your infidelity. You said, "I want to show Michelle all the beautiful things," but contrary to your words, it seems you've shown her quite a lot of ugliness. It's unforgivable. After 20 years of marriage, I'll be sure to celebrate your birthday grandly with Michelle. It will surely be a beautiful hell. I'm looking forward to it. Today is Daniel's birthday. Michelle and I have been in the business district since early this morning. We're heading to that infamous apartment of Daniel's. Mom, no matter how emotional you get, make sure Dad doesn't find us. Michelle reminded me repeatedly. Looking at the photos, my heart stirs, even though I know better. Seeing Daniel and Sarah together in person, can I really remain calm? That's why Michelle is with me today. As we hid in the bushes on the apartment grounds, Michelle said, "Ah, here he comes," and pushed me into the shadows of the building. There, parked on the street, was Daniel's car. Soon after, Daniel emerged from the apartment. And then Sarah appeared, following him. It's really Sarah. The two were loading large suitcases into the car. They must be heading out on a trip. I knew it. I know exactly where they're going. Mom, that Sarah lady is quite the hint dropper, huh? She's even posting on social media. Going on a trip here for his birthday, complete with photos and everything. The location Sarah posted on SNS was a beautiful place where our family of 3 had gone when Michelle was still a baby. Back then, Daniel had said, "When Michelle grows up, we must come back here, all 3 of us." Daniel, who only makes promises he can't keep, is now apparently taking his mistress there. I'm at a loss for words. Overwhelmed by anger and frustration, I couldn't think of anything. Get a grip, Mom. Come on, we're going too. Michelle said, snapping me back to reality with a pat on my back. That's right, we have to make Daniel regret it. For that very reason, I have been preparing up until today. Before I knew it, Daniel's car had already left. Michelle took me by the hand, and we started to take action. 6 hours later, Michelle and I were in a room at a certain hotel. Michelle placed a tablet on the table and opened a video site. We watched the screen intently, holding our breath. The screen showed a large open square with an atrium. There was a small stage at the front, with a grand piano nearby. This place likely hosts events regularly. There were many people coming and going, making it a bustling area. Surrounding the central square, there were eateries, with tables and benches arranged like a stylish food court. As it got later, the lights dimmed and the area was lit up, making it a popular spot. The change in lighting was visible on the screen as the day began to fade. He's here. I glanced at the screen at Michelle's words, and what seemed to be Daniel appeared at the edge of the frame. Next to him was a woman who appeared to be Sarah. Despite their age, the two were holding hands as they arrived. Then, they sat close together on the bench. Michelle had anticipated that they would come here. In fact, I led them here by anonymously commenting on SNS, "If you're staying at this hotel, I recommend visiting this spot at this time." Sarah seems to like Insta-worthy spots, so I was sure they'd come. She had analyzed Sarah's preferences by checking her SNS. The clock showed 4 p.m. Then, movement occurred on the screen as well. A man with a unique gait appeared in the middle of the square. He was made up like a clown. The clown, as if searching for something, comically strutted across the square. Eventually, he began to dance in the center of the square. Instantly, he captured the attention of the people gathered around, and spontaneous applause broke out. Daniel and Sarah seemed to be enjoying the performance. The number of dancers grew from 1 to 2, then 3, and before long, a group of dancers turned the square into a stage, performing an upbeat dance. This was a flash mob. One of the individuals was the target for a surprise performance. The first dancer, the clown, addressed the audience. It seems he is looking for today's target. Then Michelle sent some instructions via her phone. The green bench in the back right, towards the stage. That was where Daniel and Sarah were sitting. In the meantime, the previously upbeat music in the square changed to the sound of a piano. It was the "Happy Birthday" song. Everyone clapped along with the music, focusing on the day's target. The clown approached Daniel and Sarah in the back right. Daniel gestured as if to say, "Me?" Seeing his slightly pleased expression, I felt irritated. The clown handed Daniel a bouquet of flowers he had been hiding and shouted into a wireless microphone, "Happy birthday." At the same time, many people in the square applauded in celebration for Daniel. Daniel, not entirely displeased, waved back at everyone, getting into the spirit of things. "Now, Dad, the real fun is just beginning." The clown then took out a letter from his pocket. "I have a letter from your family," he announced, glancing at Sarah beside Daniel. The clown probably thought Sarah was his wife. Sarah looked extremely embarrassed. And Daniel made a visibly shocked expression, even through the screen. Oblivious to the situation, the clown began reading the letter with a big smile. "From your daughter, it seems. Dear Dad, happy birthday. Are you enjoying your trip today? So your daughter couldn't come with you." As the clown cheerfully read the letter, Daniel was visibly distressed. The expression on his face seemed to ask why Michelle knew about the trip. The clown continued reading without a care. "We visited this place almost 20 years ago with the family, remember? It was such a beautiful view. I still remember it. I wanted to go there with the family again, but it's a pity I couldn't." Daniel frantically gestured as if to say, "Enough already." Sarah, too, seemed eager to leave, hiding her face behind a mask. But it seemed she couldn't leave because there was a camera in front of them. The clown, slightly tilting his head, continued reading. "Please take lots of beautiful pictures of the scenery. Mom and I will be waiting at home." Huh? Looking at Sarah's face, who was averting her eyes. "Oh, and congratulations on your 20th wedding anniversary. I've sent a present to the hotel, so please accept it." "Ooh. It seems like your daughter and wife are at home. Then who is this lady?" At this point, Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. After forcing a smile for the camera, she dashed away from the scene. Left behind, Daniel stared wide-eyed in the direction Sarah had run off to. It was a rather disgraceful sight. The audience in the square also started murmuring. "Ha! The SNS is buzzing." The video was being streamed live. This flash mob was part of a project by a streamer Michelle knew. It was a popular channel, especially among viewers who enjoyed surprises and pranks. And it seemed that viewers who watched the broadcast were furiously posting on SNS. Is this a case of infidelity? The family is at home, and who is that woman? Wow, this is genuinely entertaining. The husband is in deep trouble. The broadcast seemed to be coming to an end. The screen showed the clown waving happily and Daniel with a pale face. Afterward, Daniel likely dashed off from the scene as well. He had made a fool of himself in a live broadcast to the world. Served him right. I was quite satisfied at this point, but Michelle's revenge was not over yet. "Come on, Mom. It's time to move on to the next phase." I nodded deeply and stood up. Michelle and I approached a door marked 1102. We were about to knock when we heard a man and a woman were arguing inside, so we paused. Listening closely, we heard, "Because you ran away there, I ended up looking even more like the bad guy. It was utterly embarrassing. It's all your fault. What are we going to do if the family finds out?" It was Daniel's voice. It was to be expected, of course. We came here knowing it was Daniel's room. On closer inspection, a slipper was jammed in the door, preventing it from closing properly. No wonder their voices were leaking out. What are you talking about? Your daughter already knows we're staying here. You probably blabbed. Thinking she's too naive to understand, like you always do. It's always been that way, ever since back then. Sarah was just as defiant in her response to Daniel. From my perspective, they were both at fault. Michelle and I sighed, then opened the door and entered the room. Dad, your voices are echoing all the way down the hallway. It's such a waste to be fighting on your birthday. Instead of that, why don't we have a more constructive conversation? Daniel and Sarah were utterly shocked by Michelle's sudden appearance in the room. Whoa. Michelle. How come you're here? And Emily too. Daniel's forehead was suddenly covered in cold sweat. Sarah also contorted her face, trying to escape to the back of the room. Did you read my letter, Dad? I told you I'd send a present, didn't I? Are we not good enough for you? It's nostalgic, isn't it? This place is full of family memories. But why are you here with her? Michelle asked Daniel without any hesitation. Not wanting to appear pathetic in front of Michelle, Daniel tried to maintain his composure with a forced laugh. Oh. I just happened to come here on a business trip today. Yeah. Nostalgic, right? We all came here together in the past. Ahaha. And this person is a colleague from work. Yeah. My secretary. That's why we're here together. His attempt to stay calm was not convincing, and his excuses sounded pathetic. I couldn't help but ask Daniel. Really? Since when did Sarah become your subordinate, Daniel? You've been mostly working from home with telework, haven't you? And you still need a secretary? Daniel gave me a brief glare, then replied with a slight laugh. Since last month. Even with telework, I need a secretary for scheduling and stuff. Sarah just happened to join our company last month. Really coincidental. You seem suspicious, but there's nothing to hide. His tone became more assertive when addressing me. He just couldn't stop looking down on me. Michelle retorted to Daniel's statement. Dad, is it okay to talk to Mom like that? Do you know how much she's struggled these past 10 years? And on top of that, you cheat on her and then ask her for money. You're really the worst. Being called the worst by his daughter seemed to shock Daniel. Sarah, seeing Daniel's reaction, clicked her tongue. Dad, I know everything. This woman isn't just a secretary. You've been seeing each other for 10 years, right? I remember. When we went to the apartment, she was there, right? And she told me, you're lucky you don't look like your mom. I was young, but I thought, who is this old lady? It was so rude, I remember it clearly. At Michelle's words, Sarah grimaced and stepped forward. She probably didn't like being called old lady. She seemed ready to lunge at Michelle, so I pulled Michelle towards me. Also, Dad, you've been cheating with various people since right after you married Mom. I remember you saying you were going for a walk and then meeting up with a woman. Hearing that, Daniel looked at Michelle with a puzzled expression. As if he couldn't understand what she was saying. Wait a minute. How can you remember something from so long ago? What do you mean? Because Michelle is. Daniel looked puzzled. It's no surprise, he thinks of Michelle as a child with developmental delays. Daniel, it's the opposite. Michelle has an excellent memory. She remembers everything. That you've been meeting various women since the beginning. That you've been with Sarah for 10 years. That we all went on trips together. I said this and showed Daniel the screen of my phone. It was a photo of Daniel with Sarah. Photos taken over the past 10 years amounted to dozens. Daniel and Sarah were unable to hide their shock. All taken by Michelle. She mastered using the phone I gave her when she was 7. Even though I barely taught her how to use it. The audio is also saved, you know? Your and Sarah's vivid conversations. The audio included derogatory comments about my father, who had readily provided financial support because he was Daniel's father-in-law. After all the help, this was a terrible way to repay us. Daniel, that's enough, isn't it? Let's get a divorce. Knowing all this, I can't stay married to you. Sarah, if you want Daniel, he's all yours. Not that he was mine to begin with. Do as you please. I threw in a bit of provocation with my words. Daniel, sweating and wide-eyed, couldn't say anything in response. Sarah reacted strongly to my provocation. You're such an infuriating woman. Always have been. The only reason I endured that grueling job for a year was that it was my only option. I had to work to support my parents. You always had the escape of your father's company to flaunt in our faces. I've always been so angry at you. You, with all your privileges, I hated you. She said this through tears. Her words struck a chord, even with me. Sarah, I'm sorry if I made you feel bad back then, and I reflect on that. I always thought I could just quit my job and help with my father's business. I'm truly sorry. But that's a separate issue. I glanced at Michelle once. She nodded firmly. Then, turning back to Daniel and Sarah, I took a deep breath and let it out. Daniel, I'm going to file for divorce and claim child support for Michelle as well as repayment for all the money I've given. There will be no division of property. We don't have any assets as a couple. At the mention of repayment, Daniel's face twisted even further. Sarah's reaction was similar. However, we had irrefutable evidence on our side. There was no way he could talk his way out of this. Emily, I'm not going to pay any. I won't divorce, so I won't pay. I'll break up with Sarah. I'll return home. That should be fine, right? What he proposed was a declaration of reconciliation. What was Daniel thinking? We were already at the end of our relationship, it was over. If so, I will break up with you, Daniel. I don't need you with no money anyway. She too seemed to have a blissfully ignorant understanding. She didn't seem to know that compensation can be claimed even without a divorce. Either way, not divorcing wasn't an option for me. Dad, it's time to let Mom go. She's not your wallet. The divorce is final, struggling is futile. Daniel went up to Michelle, pleading. Michelle. You'll stay by my side, right? You'll come with Dad, right? You were always closer to me than to Mom, weren't you? Come on, Michelle. Stay with me. His voice was breaking towards the end. Daniel, who had deceived us for over 10 years, was capable of feigning tears. Dad, I told you I remember everything, right? Your affairs, asking Mom for money. Of course, I also remember that you loved me. At Michelle's words, Daniel began to cry. This time, it seemed genuine. Really? You remember? Thank you, Michelle. Let's live together from now on, okay? I'll send you to college, get you a good job. So? Let's live together, okay? Michelle? Daniel reached out to Michelle, but she brushed his hand aside. What? There's no way I could live with you. I remember very well how you hurt Mom. I decided I would never forgive you. Saying this, she came over to me. Then, after saying goodbye at the exit, she left the room. Daniel, rejected by Michelle, collapsed to his knees. Sobbing, he cried. I was about to leave the room too, but Daniel stopped me. I turned around, thinking he was surprisingly sentimental. Near the window, Sarah, having resigned to her fate, was smoking a cigarette with a distant look in her eyes. At my feet, Daniel was clinging to me. Emily, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. It's all my fault. So please, don't divorce me. Don't ask for anything. Please. I beg you. Daniel apologized, collapsing onto the carpet. If he was sorry, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. And it was concerning that his true feelings seemed to peek through his apologies. However, I had no intention of forgiving him. Unfortunately, the divorce is final. We'll discuss everything else through a lawyer. And yes, of course. I'm stopping the financial support to your company. My father saw the broadcast too. He was furious. Good luck. With that, I left Daniel's room. I hurried back to where Michelle had likely returned. From room 1102, I could hear something like Daniel's crying screams. But I didn't look back and continued straight to our room. What a family trip this turned out to be. I muttered, sighing for the last time that day. Mom, which do you prefer for lunch, pescatori or seafood pasta? It seemed Michelle was going to make lunch today. I requested pescatori. Though I thought to myself that pescatori is also seafood, I didn't mention it to Michelle. The smell from the kitchen was appetizing and whetted my appetite. 2 weeks had passed since that day. After spending one night at the hotel, Michelle and I did a little sightseeing the next day before returning home. What happened to Daniel and Sarah is unclear. At the very least, they never showed up in front of us, mother and daughter, again. According to the lawyer, Daniel is still not agreeing to the divorce. It's baffling to think what he's arguing about while living with another woman. It's likely just about the money troubles he's facing. However, it seems only a matter of time before the divorce is finalized. Regardless, we plan to collect money from him properly. My father also seems to have various claims against Daniel. I've caused trouble for my father this time. I'm thinking of taking Michelle to visit our family home sometime soon. Daniel's company, cut off from my father's financial support, is apparently on the verge of bankruptcy. Sarah's SNS has blown up. She was being bashed online along with Daniel. The once assertive Sarah initially fought back but has now locked her account and is in hiding. While looking into Dad's affairs, I found out he's been fooling around with several other women over the past 10 years, besides Sarah. All of them said they didn't know he was married. Really, what is he doing? Michelle brought the finished pasta to the table. The large shrimp looked incredibly delicious. In the end, we never told Daniel that Michelle is gifted. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Gifted or not, Michelle remains my precious daughter, and that won't change. However, for this incident, I am grateful for Michelle's remarkable memory. And Michelle, who came up with the flash mob strategy, is a bit scary. I'm profoundly relieved that she's on my side. Today might be a significant day where Michelle's dream could come true. Nowadays, it's convenient to check results online, unlike in the past. That's when I realized something. Right, no matter what, you are going to be a teacher, aren't you? Michelle is laughing beside me. Mom, you're getting ahead of yourself. Maybe teacher in training is more like it? I laughed too. It's almost time for the results to come out. Michelle taps on her phone screen. It's okay, as long as we don't give up, the dream will surely come true. A few minutes later, a teacher in training is born. The new chapter in our lives is about to start.